Jake Morrison crouched behind the broken wall of what used to be a school. His rifle felt heavy in his hands. The morning sun made long shadows across the empty streets of New Phoenix Colony. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. See anything, Sarge? Corporal Lisa Hayes whispered from behind a burned-out car. Her voice was barely louder than breathing. Jake shook his head. Nothing yet. But they're here. I can feel it. Private Danny Clark moved closer, keeping low. His young face showed fear, but his hand stayed steady on his weapon. How do you know, Sarge? 3 years of fighting these bugs teaches you things, Jake said. He looked at the empty buildings around them. Windows were broken. Doors hung open. The aliens had taken everyone who lived here. The Zephyrians had come to Earth 3 years ago. At first, people thought they wanted to talk. The bug-like aliens were 8 feet tall with hard shells covering their bodies. They had forearms and big black eyes. When they spoke, it sounded like clicking and buzzing, but they didn't want to talk. They wanted Earth, and they wanted humans for slaves or worse. Jake touched the small metal piece that hung around his neck under his shirt. His grandfather had given it to him before he died. It was just a simple pendant with strange lines carved into it. His grandfather said it had been in their family for many generations. Jake never understood why it was so important, but wearing it made him feel closer to home. Movement, Lisa said suddenly. 2 blocks north. Jake looked through his scope. Something big moved between the buildings. Then another. The Zephyrians always traveled in groups. How many? Danny asked. Can't tell yet, Jake said. But we need to... The plasma blast hit the wall next to his head. Hot stone pieces flew everywhere. Jake rolled away as more green energy bolts filled the air around them. Contact! Contact! Lisa shouted into her radio. But only static came back. The aliens were blocking their signals again. The Zephyrians came from 3 directions at once. Their long legs carried them fast across the broken ground. Their plasma rifles fired without stopping. The air filled with the smell of burning concrete and metal. Jake fired back, trying to hit the lead alien. His bullets bounced off its hard shell like rain. Aim for the joints, he yelled. Between the armor pieces. Lisa's rifle cracked twice. One of the aliens stumbled but kept coming. Danny was firing as fast as he could, but his hands were shaking now. More aliens appeared. Too many. Jake counted at least 12 of them. His squad only had 3 people. We need to move, Jake shouted. Fall back to the plaza. But it was too late. Plasma bolts came from behind them now. They were surrounded. A Zephyrian soldier appeared on top of the school building. It pointed a strange weapon at them. Blue light shot out. Jake felt his muscles lock up. He couldn't move. His rifle fell from his hands, the paralysis beam. Jake had heard about it but never seen it used. His body wouldn't obey him anymore. He could only watch as the aliens moved closer. Lisa tried to crawl away, but another blue beam hit her. Danny was already frozen, his eyes wide with terror. The biggest Zephyrian walked up to them. Its shell was darker than the others with silver markings. It spoke in the clicking language. Another alien answered back. Then the leader pulled out a long, curved blade. It walked to Danny first. No, Jake tried to say, but his voice wouldn't work. The blade went through Danny's chest in one quick motion. The young soldier's eyes went empty. His body fell forward. Jake felt rage burning in his chest, but he still couldn't move. The leader walked to Lisa next. Please, Jake managed to whisper. The Zephyrian looked at him for a moment. Its black eyes showed nothing. Then it killed Lisa just as quickly as it had killed Danny. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. His friends were dead and he couldn't do anything to stop it. The aliens talked among themselves, pointing at him. He heard one word he recognized from intercepted alien communications. Specimen. They weren't going to kill him. They were going to take him somewhere. For experiments, probably, or to work until he died. 2 Zephyrians grabbed his arms and lifted him up. His body was starting to work again, but not enough to fight back. They put metal bands around his wrists. The bands felt hot against his skin, energy shackles. They would burn him if he tried to break free. One of the aliens tore at his tactical vest looking for weapons. Jake felt the pendant shift under his shirt. If they found it, they would take it away. It was the last thing he had from his family. He tried to press the pendant closer to his body with his arm. The alien searching him was more interested in his gear and missed the small metal piece. The Zephyrians loaded him into a transport vehicle that looked like a giant beetle. Through the window, he could see his friends' bodies lying in the street. He had failed them. He had failed his mission, but he was still alive. And as long as he was alive, he could fight back somehow. The transport lifted off the ground and flew toward the alien base. Jake closed his eyes and felt the pendant against his chest. Whatever these aliens wanted with him, they were going to get more trouble than they expected. He thought about his grandfather's words. Sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest power. Jake had never understood what that meant. Maybe he was about to find out. The transport landed with a hard bump. Jake's energy shackles burned his wrists as he was pulled out of the vehicle. The alien base looked like a nightmare made real. What used to be a human research station was now covered in strange alien metal. Black towers rose into the sky like claws. Green lights pulsed along the walls. The air smelled like burning plastic and something else Jake couldn't name. Dozens of humans stood in long lines waiting. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Their faces showed no hope. Guards with plasma rifles watched them from raised platforms. "Keep moving," one of the Zephyrians said in broken English. It pushed Jake toward the nearest line. Jake looked around, counting guards and exits. The fence was too high to climb, and it sparked with electricity. Watchtowers stood at each corner. But there had to be a way out. There always was. The line moved slowly. Jake could hear crying from somewhere ahead. A woman's voice begged for something in a language he didn't recognize. Then silence. "First time here?" The voice came from behind him. Jake turned to see a woman about 40 years old. Her brown hair was cut short, and her clothes looked like a scientist's lab coat but torn and stained. "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "You?" 3 weeks. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "I'm Dr. Amy Foster. I was working at the university when they came. Jake Morrison. Marine." Amy's eyes lit up a little. "Military? Good. We might need that." She looked around to make sure no guards were listening. "What do you know about these aliens?" "They're hard to kill, they shoot green fire, and they hate humans," Jake said. "There's more than that." Amy moved closer. "I study alien life forms." Was studying them anyway. "The Zephyrians have a very strict society. Everything is about rank and rules." The line moved forward. Jake could see a large building ahead with aliens going in and out. "What happens in there?" "Processing." Amy's face went dark. "They sort us into groups. Workers for the mines. Test subjects for their experiments. Breeding stock for their colonies." She paused. "The ones they don't want, they kill right away." Jake felt cold despite the warm air. "How do they decide?" "I'm not sure. Age, health, skills maybe. But there's something else. Something they're looking for." Amy glanced at the guards. "I've seen them get excited about certain prisoners. Like they found something special." "Special how?" Before Amy could answer, the line moved again. They were getting close to the building now. Jake could hear machines inside. "And screaming. Listen," Amy whispered. "Whatever happens in there, don't fight back too much. They kill people who resist. But don't give up either. I think I know a way out, but I need time to figure it out." "What kind of way out?" "The aliens worship something. Some kind of ancient race that was here before them. I think if we could find—" "Silence." A Zephyrian guard pointed its rifle at them. "No talking in line." Jake and Amy looked forward and stayed quiet. But Jake's mind was racing. Ancient race? What did that mean? The line moved faster now. Jake could see inside the building through the open doors. Humans were strapped to metal tables. Alien machines moved over them, scanning them with red lights. Some people were led away through different doors. Others were dragged to what looked like cages. "Next," a voice called out in English. Jake watched as the person in front of him, an old man, walked through the doors. 5 minutes later, Jake heard a scream. Then nothing. "Next." Amy went before him. Jake watched through the doorway as she was pushed onto one of the tables. An alien with purple markings on its shell looked her over. It seemed interested in something and marked her file. She was led away through a door marked with alien symbols. "Next." Jake's turn. The energy shackles pushed him forward into the building. The inside was worse than the outside. The walls were covered with human blood. Bodies lay stacked in one corner. The smell made Jake want to throw up. The purple-marked alien looked at him. Its black eyes moved up and down his body like it was examining a piece of meat. This must be the commander Amy had warned him about. "Human male," it said in perfect English. "Military training. Good muscle tone." It picked up a device that looked like a scanner. "Remove clothing." 2 guards grabbed Jake's arms. If he was going to fight, it had to be now. But Amy's words came back to him. Don't fight back too much. He needed to stay alive long enough to find a way out. The guards tore off his uniform shirt. The cool air hit his skin. The pendant bounced against his chest, still hanging on its thin chain. The commander raised its scanner toward Jake's chest. This was it. In a few seconds, they would find the pendant. They would take away the last thing he had from his family. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his grandfather. Sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest power. What had the old man meant by that? The scanner beeped as it moved over Jake's body. The commander looked at the readings and marked something on its file. Then it looked up at Jake's face. This one goes to the mines, it said. Strong enough for heavy work? Jake opened his eyes. The pendant was still there, hanging in plain sight. How had they missed it? But as the guards started to lead him away, Jake's shirt caught on the scanner device. There was a ripping sound. The pendant bounced once and fell to the floor with a small metal clink. The commander stopped talking. It looked down at the pendant lying on the floor. Its compound eyes grew wide. It picked up the small metal piece with one of its 4 hands. The carved lines on the pendant seemed to glow in the alien lights. The commander stared at it for a long time. Its breathing got faster. Its hands started to shake. What is this? It whispered. Where did you get this? Jake didn't answer. He couldn't tell if the commander was angry or scared. Maybe both. The commander held the pendant higher, studying the carved pattern. Then it made a sound Jake had never heard before. A high-pitched clicking that seemed to go on forever. Other aliens in the room stopped what they were doing. They all looked at the pendant. Some of them made the same clicking sound. Bring the High Commander, the purple-marked alien said to one of the guards. Bring him now. The guard ran out of the room. Jake stood there in his energy shackles, not understanding what was happening. All he knew was that his grandfather's pendant had changed everything. The aliens around him were acting different now. They weren't looking at him like he was just another prisoner anymore. They were looking at him like he was something they had been searching for. Jake touched the place on his chest where the pendant usually hung. Whatever was about to happen, he had the feeling his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The clicking sound got louder. More aliens rushed into the room, all staring at the pendant in the commander's hand. Jake had never seen them act like this before. They seemed excited and scared at the same time. Heavy footsteps echoed from outside. The aliens in the room moved back, making space. Jake heard them whisper one word over and over. Kethmore. The alien who walked through the door was bigger than any Jake had ever seen. It stood almost 9 feet tall, with golden markings covering its black shell. 4 arms hung at its sides, each one thick with muscle. This had to be their leader. High Commander Kethmore moved slowly toward the purple-marked commander. The smaller alien held out the pendant with shaking hands. Commander Vexithara, Kethmore said in a deep voice. Show me. Vexithara placed the pendant in Kethmore's large hand. The High Commander brought it close to his compound eyes. For a long moment he just stared at the carved pattern. Then something amazing happened. Kethmore dropped to one knee in front of Jake. The other aliens in the room did the same thing. Jake looked around in shock. These creatures who had been treating humans like animals were now kneeling before him. Remove his chains, Kethmore ordered. Sir? Vexthara sounded confused. But he is just a human prisoner. Remove them now. Kethmore's voice boomed through the room. The energy shackles fell away from Jake's wrists. The burning feeling stopped. He rubbed the red marks on his skin, still not understanding what was happening. Kethmore stood up and handed the pendant back to Jake. Forgive us, he said. We did not know who you were. Jake took the pendant and put it back around his neck. I don't understand. It's just an old piece of metal my grandfather gave me. It is much more than that. Kethmore turned to the other aliens. Clear the room, now. The aliens hurried out, leaving only Jake, Kethmore, and Vexthara. Through the window, Jake could see Amy in a holding area. She was watching everything with wide eyes. Bring the human female scientist, Kethmore said to Vexthara. The one called Foster. She may be able to help us understand. A few minutes later, guards brought Amy into the room. She looked confused and frightened. Jake, what's going on? Why aren't you in chains? I don't know, Jake said. Something about this pendant. Amy looked at the small metal piece hanging around Jake's neck. Her mouth fell open. Jake, where did you get that? My grandfather. It's been in my family for generations. Why? Amy moved closer, studying the carved lines. I know this pattern. I've seen it before in my research. She looked up at Kethmore. This is a Forerunner mark, isn't it? Kethmore's eyes widened. You know of the Forerunners? I study ancient civilizations, Amy said. Before the war, I was working on a project about mysterious artifacts found on different worlds. This pattern showed up in ruins that were millions of years old. Jake looked back and forth between them. What are Forerunners? Kethmore was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. Long ago, before my people reached the stars, there was another race. We call them the Forerunners. They were the first to travel between worlds. The first to build great cities among the stars. What happened to them? Amy asked. They vanished. No one knows why. But they left things behind. Technology we still do not understand. And marks like this one. Kethmore pointed at Jake's pendant. We have found only 3 others in all our history. Jake touched the pendant. My grandfather said it was important, but I thought he was just telling old stories. Your grandfather was wise, Kethmore said. This mark is not just a symbol. It is a key, a sign that your bloodline was chosen by the Forerunners for a special purpose. Chosen for what? Jake asked. We do not know. But each time we have found one of these marks, it has led us to great discoveries, new worlds, advanced technology, answers to questions we did not know how to ask. Amy was getting excited. I've studied Forerunner sites on Earth too. They're mostly in the southwestern United States. Jake, where is your family from? Arizona, Jake said. My grandfather's people have lived there for hundreds of years. Maybe longer. That's where most of the sites are, Amy said. Jake, your family might have been guardians of Forerunner knowledge for centuries. Kethmore moved closer. Human Jake Morrison, I must ask you something important. Will you help us learn about the Forerunners? Will you help us understand what this mark means? Jake looked around the room. An hour ago, he had been a prisoner waiting to die or be enslaved. Now the leader of the alien army was asking for his help. It didn't make sense. What about the war? Jake asked. What about all the humans you've killed? Kethmore's head dropped. We thought humans were just another primitive species. We did not know about your connection to the Forerunners. We made a terrible mistake. A mistake? Jake felt anger rising in his chest. You killed my friends. You destroyed our cities. You turned people into slaves. Yes, Kethmore said simply, and I will carry that shame forever. But now we have a chance to make things right. If you truly carry the blood of the Forerunners, then you may be the key to something greater than our war. Jake wanted to say no. He wanted to grab a weapon and fight these aliens until they killed him. But Amy put her hand on his arm. Jake, she said quietly, if we can learn about the Forerunners, we might be able to stop this war. We might be able to save the humans who are still alive. Jake looked at the pendant in his hands. Such a small thing, but it had just changed everything. Maybe his grandfather had been right. Maybe the smallest things really did carry the greatest power. Okay, Jake said finally. I'll help. But I have conditions. Name them, Kethmore said. First, no more killing humans. Second, you release all the prisoners. Third, Dr. Foster works with us on this. Kethmore thought for a moment. The first 2 will be difficult to arrange. My people will not understand. But I will try. The third is easy. We will need her knowledge, Jake nodded. Then let's find out what my grandfather really left me. Outside, the sun was setting over the alien base. Jake had started the day as a soldier fighting a war. Now he was something else entirely. He just hoped he would live long enough to understand what that meant. Jake followed High Commander Kethmore through long hallways he had never seen before. The walls here were different from the rest of the base. They looked older, like they had been here long before the aliens arrived. These sections were built by your people, Kethmore explained as they walked. We have kept them exactly as we found them. The Forerunner markings told us this place was important. Amy walked beside Jake, looking at everything with excited eyes. Jake, this research station was built on top of Forerunner ruins. That's probably why the aliens took it first. They stopped at a heavy door covered in the same carved patterns as Jake's pendant. Kethmore pressed his hand against a panel. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a room full of strange objects. Crystal formations glowed with soft blue light. Metal devices sat on tables, their purpose unknown. The walls were covered with star charts and symbols that hurt to look at directly. Welcome to our archive, Kethmore said. Everything we know about the Forerunners is here. Jake stared at a large crystal in the center of the room. It was taller than he was and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. How long have you been collecting this stuff? 5,000 years, Kethmore replied. Since we first found ruins on our homeworld. The Forerunners left traces on many planets, but never enough to tell us who they really were. Amy was already examining the star charts. These show star positions from millions of years ago. The Forerunners mapped the entire galaxy. She turned to Kethmore. Have you ever found any indication of where they went? No, they simply vanished. But they left instructions behind. Commands for those who would come after them. What kind of commands? Jake asked. Kethmore walked to a wall covered in carved symbols. Find the marked ones. Protect the chosen bloodlines. Prepare for the return. He looked at Jake. We thought this meant we should search for Forerunner technology. Now I believe it meant we should search for people like you. Jake touched his pendant.
My grandfather never told me any of this.
He just said our family were protectors of something important. Perhaps he did not know the full truth, Kethmore said. Perhaps the knowledge was lost over time. But the mark remained, passed down from parent to child, waiting for the right moment. Amy pulled out a device that looked like a scanner. Jake, can I examine your pendant more closely? I want to see if it matches exactly with the symbols here. Jake took off the pendant and handed it to her. Amy placed it under her scanner and compared it to the wall carvings. The match was perfect. It's identical, she said with wonder. Jake, this isn't just similar to Forerunner symbols. This is a Forerunner symbol, made by them. That's impossible, Jake said. My grandfather's family has had this for generations. Humans didn't even know aliens existed until 3 years ago. The Forerunners visited Earth long ago, Kethmore said, before your written history began. They chose certain families to carry their marks. Your bloodline has been serving the Forerunners for thousands of years without knowing it. Jake felt dizzy. Serving them how? Amy looked up from her scanner. As guardians. Jake, I think your family has been protecting Forerunner sites on Earth this whole time. The southwestern United States has dozens of ancient ruins that don't match any known human civilization. My grandfather's ranch, Jake said slowly. There are caves there with strange markings. He always told me to stay away from them. Said they were sacred. Kethmore and Amy looked at each other with excitement. Jake, Amy said, I think those caves might be a Forerunner facility. One that's been waiting for the right person to open it. How do you know? Kethmore walked to another wall display. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with glowing points of light scattered across it. Each mark we have found has led us to an active Forerunner site, technology that still works after millions of years. He pressed a control, and the map zoomed in on Earth. Several points of light appeared in the southwestern United States. We detected these signals 3 years ago. Kethmore continued. It is why we came to your world. We thought Earth held Forerunner secrets, so you started a war to steal our planet, Jake said angrily. We thought humans were just another primitive species living on a Forerunner world, Kethmore replied. We did not know humans were connected to the Forerunners themselves. We should have looked for the marked ones first. Amy stood up suddenly. Wait, if the Forerunners left specific instructions, what exactly did they want people to prepare for? Kethmore was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the largest display in the room. The screen showed empty space between galaxies. The Forerunners left warnings, he said finally. Something drove them away from this galaxy. Something they called the Devourers. What are the Devourers? Jake asked. We do not know exactly. The Forerunner records are unclear, but they speak of entities that consume entire civilizations, beings that turn planets into empty husks. Amy's face went pale. Are they coming back? The Forerunner calculations suggest yes, soon. Kethmore turned to face them. This is why finding the marked ones is so important. The Forerunners believed that their chosen bloodlines would know how to activate their weapons when the time came. Jake felt the weight of the pendant around his neck. You're saying my family is supposed to fight some kind of galactic monsters? Not fight alone, Kethmore said. Unite the galaxy. Bring all species together. Use Forerunner technology to defend against the Devourers. That's why the Forerunners chose humans, Amy said with growing understanding. Humans are good at bringing different groups together. Even when we fight each other, we can still work together when we face a common enemy. Jake looked around the room full of alien technology and ancient mysteries. A week ago, his biggest worry was leading his squad on patrol missions. Now he was apparently supposed to save the galaxy. There's something else, Kethmore said. The pendant you carry is not just a symbol. It is a key. When brought to an active Forerunner site, it will unlock their greatest weapons. How do you know that? Jake asked. Because we have tried it before with the other marks we found, but each one only worked at certain sites. We believe your mark is different, special. Amy was studying her scanner again. The energy signature from Jake's pendant is stronger than anything in this room. It's like it's been waiting to be activated. Jake held up the pendant and looked at the simple carved lines. So what happens now? Now we go to Earth, Kethmore said. To your grandfather's land. And we find out what the Forerunners left for you to discover. Jake thought about his home, the desert hills where he had grown up, the caves his grandfather had warned him to avoid. If Kethmore was right, those caves might hold the key to saving humanity. But first, Jake had to trust the alien who had been his enemy just hours before. And somehow, looking at the wonder and hope in Kethmore's eyes, Jake thought that might be possible. All right, Jake said. Let's go wake up some ancient aliens. The ship landed in the desert near Jake's grandfather's old ranch. Jake stepped out onto familiar ground, but everything felt different now. The red rocks and twisted cacti looked the same, but he was seeing them with new eyes. The energy readings are very strong here, Amy said, checking her scanner. There's definitely something big underground. Kethmore and a small group of his warriors followed behind them. The other aliens looked nervous. They had never been this close to an active Forerunner site before. The caves are about a mile north, Jake said, pointing toward a low hill. My grandfather always said they were dangerous. Now I'm starting to understand why. They walked across the desert in silence. Jake thought about all the times he had played in these hills as a child, never knowing he was walking over ancient alien technology. His grandfather had always watched him carefully when they came this way. Now Jake knew why. The cave entrance was exactly as Jake remembered it. A narrow opening in the red rock almost hidden by thorny bushes. Strange symbols were carved into the stone around the opening. Jake had seen these markings his whole life, but now he recognized them as Forerunner writing. This is it, Amy whispered. Jake, the energy readings here are off the charts. Jake pulled out his pendant and held it up to the carved symbols. The metal grew warm in his hand. The symbols began to glow with soft blue light. It's responding, Kethmore said with excitement. The site is recognizing your genetic signature. Jake stepped closer to the cave entrance. The pendant grew warmer. The blue light got brighter. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the ground began to move. The cave entrance widened. Ancient machinery hummed to life deep underground. Lights appeared along the walls, leading down into darkness. The Forerunners built this place to wait for you, Kethmore said. For someone with your bloodline and your mark. Jake looked back at his companions. Amy's eyes were bright with scientific curiosity. Kethmore and his warriors looked like they were about to enter a temple. Everyone was counting on him to do this, right? Well, Jake said, let's not keep them waiting any longer. They walked down into the earth. The tunnel was smooth and perfectly round, clearly made by advanced technology. The walls showed star charts and diagrams that seemed to move when Jake wasn't looking directly at them. After 10 minutes of walking, they reached a massive chamber. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Ancient machines lined the walls, all pulsing with gentle light. In the center of the room stood a pillar of crystal, similar to the one in Kethmore's archive, but much larger. Jake, Amy breathed. This place is incredible. It's been waiting here for thousands of years. Jake approached the crystal pillar. His pendant was almost hot now, and the light from it was casting rainbow patterns on the walls. When he got within 10 feet of the pillar, something amazing happened. The air above the crystal shimmered and a figure appeared. It was tall and thin, with forearms like the Zephyrians but more graceful. Its skin was silver and its eyes were the color of deep space. This was a Forerunner. Greetings, young guardian, the figure said in perfect English. I am Architect Veltar. I have been waiting a very long time to speak with you. Jake's mouth fell open. You're really one of them? I am a recording left by the Forerunners for this moment, Veltar replied. When the last of my people departed this galaxy, we knew others would follow. We hoped some would be wise enough to carry our legacy forward. The Devourers, Kethmore said, stepping forward. Are they returning? Veltar turned to look at the alien commander. A Zephyrian. Your people have served the Forerunner cause well, though perhaps not always wisely. The hologram looked sad. Yes, the Devourers return. Our long-range sensors detect them at the edge of this galaxy. They will arrive within your lifetime. Amy pulled out her recorder. What are the Devourers exactly? Entities from beyond this reality, Veltar explained. They consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing but empty space behind. They drove my people from this galaxy millions of years ago. We hoped that by the time they returned, the younger races would be strong enough to resist them. How do we fight them? Jake asked. Veltar smiled, and the expression looked strange on the alien face. You unite. Humans, Zephyrians, and all the other intelligent species of this galaxy. The Devourers can overwhelm any single race, but together, using Forerunner technology, you might succeed where we failed. The hologram gestured to the machines around the chamber. This facility contains weapon designs, shield generators, and communication systems that can link every world in the galaxy. But they require cooperation between species to operate. Cooperation, Kethmore repeated. After all the blood that has been spilled between our peoples. Blood that need not have been spilled, Veltar said firmly. The Forerunners chose humans as their primary guardians because humans excel at building bridges between different groups. Jake Morrison carries more than just Forerunner genetics. He carries the potential to unite your peoples. Jake felt overwhelmed. I'm just a soldier. I don't know how to unite different species. You have already begun, Veltar pointed out. A human and a Zephyrian stand here together, working toward the same goal. That would have been impossible a week ago. Amy stepped forward. What do we need to do? Activate the network, Veltar replied. There are 12 Forerunner facilities hidden across this galaxy. Each one must be awakened by someone carrying the genetic markers. Jake's bloodline can activate them all, but he will need help. What kind of help? Jake asked. Representatives from every major species, Veltar said. The network was designed to be operated by a council of different races. Trust must be built. Alliances must be formed. Kethmore bowed his head. I pledge the support of the Zephyrian Empire. We will help build this alliance. Even if it means sharing power with humans? Jake asked. Especially then, Kethmore replied. My people have spent thousands of years searching for Forerunner wisdom. Now I see that wisdom was meant to be shared, not hoarded. Veltar nodded approvingly. The process begins here. Jake Morrison, place your pendant against the crystal pillar. This will activate the first node in the network and send a signal to the other hidden facilities. Jake hesitated for a moment. Once he did this, there would be no going back. He would be committed to this path of uniting the galaxy against an enemy he couldn't even imagine. But he thought about his fallen friends, Lisa and Danny. He thought about all the humans and Zephyrians who had died in a war that should never have happened. Maybe this was a chance to make their deaths mean something. Jake pressed the pendant against the crystal. The chamber filled with brilliant light. The machines around the walls hummed to life. Energy flowed through conduits in the floor and walls. Above them, Jake could see images appearing in the air. Star maps showing locations across the galaxy lighting up one by one. The network awakens, Veltar said as his image began to fade. The other facilities are receiving the activation signal. But remember, young Guardian, technology alone will not save you. Only unity can overcome the darkness that approaches. As the hologram disappeared, Jake felt a change in himself. The pendant around his neck no longer felt like just a family heirloom. It felt like a responsibility. Amy was recording everything with her scanner. Jake, we just witnessed the activation of a galaxy-wide defense network. This is the most important moment in human history. Kethmore was studying the star maps floating in the air. I recognize some of these locations. We can reach them with our ships. The alliance you spoke of, it can be built. Jake looked at the two of them already working together despite being enemies just days before. Maybe Veltar was right. Maybe humans really were good at building bridges. Then let's get started, Jake said. We have a galaxy to unite and a war to prepare for. As they walked back up to the surface, Jake felt the weight of the pendant against his chest. His grandfather had been right all along. Sometimes the smallest things did carry the greatest power. Now Jake just had to figure out how to use that power to save everyone he had ever known. The real work was just beginning.